Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of MIDDVantage's series, Exploring Careers in Global Security, an International Development Perspective. My name is Sophie Bardetti, and I'm a member of Middlebury College's class of 2022. It is my pleasure to welcome today our guest speaker, Amy McQuade. Amy is an experienced Foreign Service officer with the United States Agency for International Development, also known as USAID. She has represented the United States government at the forefront of foreign policy and global security objectives. During the span of her career, she has served as a diplomat on 4 continents, including Haiti, Cuba, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Afghanistan, and Lebanon. Prior to joining USAID, Amy practiced law in the DC Superior Court and the DC Court of Appeals. She also served as a legal clerk at the United Nations International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda in Arusha, Tanzania, and the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia in The Hague, the Netherlands. Amy holds a Juris Doctor and a Master's of Art degree in International Development from American University in Washington, D.C. Amy attended Middlebury College in Vermont, graduating with a Bachelor of Arts in International Studies with a concentration in Political Science and Italian. In her spare time, Amy volunteers for the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project as a screening attorney and studies her third Romance language, Romanian. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank you so much for having me, Sophie. I'm thrilled to be here to speak to you about international development and its intersectionality with global security and my experience with that. My studies at Middlebury really launched me into my career in international development, and I'm always pleased to be able to speak about my pivotal and formative years in Vermont and where it has led me. So thank you.
Welcome, thank you. Amy, this series explores a number of different global security challenges facing the US and the world. This episode in particular focuses on the field of international development. International development focuses on a number of issues within the developing world. Can you describe these issues from a global security perspective?
Yeah, great question. So global security in the 21st century is very complex, which I'm sure all of you know. There's rising powers that we haven't seen before, non-state actors, hybrid wars, there's cyber challenges, and a big one is resource scarcity. So let me give you some further background before I delve into my personal experience, just to kind of discuss the larger themes around the intersectionality between international development and global security. It doesn't seem at first that they would be really closely linked, but they are highly related. So let me delve a little bit more into that. So we're really in an unprecedented time of global instability, which I think we can all agree with. Whether from climate change, economic decline, terrorism, nationalism, decade-long wars that are still ongoing, pandemics, democratic backsliding, and we're really seeing the traditional status quo and balance of power challenged again. And this time it's more by China and Russia. So the really unipolar moment of the early post-Cold War years, which was, United States, Russia, has been replaced with a much more diffuse international system and a wider range of complex issues requiring sustained attention. So although Russia is still, a key power in play, there are a lot more other factors, I think, that have come in to contribute to global security and insecurity. So, for example, many vulnerable nations are experiencing state breakdown. I work in these places, so I know quite a bit about that. And I'll get into some examples from my personal experience that really show you how international development relates to global security. There's also, terrorism, natural disasters, environmental degradation has become a big key issue. The world also now has the largest population flows and total number of refugees since the 1940s. So we're seeing shifts in borders, we're seeing shifts in populations, disputes over land. Russia has aggressively challenged other countries' borders and political system. This is another thing that's a key factor that's coming into play right now in global security issues. China's rise has fueled tensions in the South China Sea. There's also, we're seeing again, nuclear proliferation in the Middle East and Asia, which threatens to sort of destabilize the region and also global order. So with all of these challenges, I have to say, there is an opportunity, which is where I work within that space, to use and create smart, effective foreign assistance policies that help to strengthen and protect our world. So how? How is this done? How are these opportunities taken advantage of? So this is where USAID and my job comes in. So the US really operates their foreign assistance platform and foreign objective platform in global security space on a three-pronged strategy, which I'm sure probably you've heard of, where it's really, there's 3 Ds. It's defense, diplomacy, and development. And what they say, at least when I was learning about this, is it is a three-legged stool, and each leg of the stool is one of the Ds. If one of the Ds is not in play at the forefront in trying to combat global insecurity, then the stool cannot sit properly and it will fall over. So you really need all 3 parts in order to be able to effectively counteract these pressures. So defense, we have the military, right? Diplomacy, State Department, and then development, USAID. So, and interrupt me if you have questions as I'm going through, but international development's role in global security was really spearheaded at first by just a single American agency, which is USAID, the US Agency for International Development. And it's really now turned more into a network of stakeholders. So you have the private sector, donors, official donors, NGOs, academics, multilateral banks, and what was national, it was a national policy just to try to foster prosperity abroad, has now changed into a multitude of worthy causes. So I work on all of these to try and support the global security and the United States position within global security, such as preventing conflict, eradicating HIV, raising communities out of poverty. So what really started at USAID as just a funding of projects related to, schools and health clinics in, faraway places in Africa has now changed to looking for solutions and implementing solutions to some of the world's most intractable problems. So entrenched poverty, corruption, climate change, pandemics. So it's a very interesting space. USAID, we're considered to be soft power. So international development is really within global security is a soft power. It's not hard power like the military, it's soft. And so what we do is through our development and humanitarian assistance programs, we promote and demonstrate democratic values abroad. We advance free, peaceful, and a prosperous world and contribute to global security in that way. So what does that actually mean? That's the theory, right? What does that mean in practice? So I'm going to give you a few examples from my own personal experience of working on programs that specifically relate to demonstrating democratic values abroad and also to contributing to global security. So USAID has a framework called the Clear Choice Framework. And this is something that's come about in 2018. And it's something new that we're just rolling out really still and trying to figure out how to actually implement it and make it effective. So what it is basically we in these foreign countries are saying to these host governments, you have a clear choice under this framework. You are, USAID will assist you in providing assistance funds that are directly responsive to the host country's needs and policy choices. And this is a direct contrast to China's authoritarian model that produces strategic debt and dependence. So for us, the clear choice doctrine is the United States presents this option to country where aid is needed, and there's a clear choice. If they choose China as a partner, they are in theory mortgaging their future to that country through unsustainable debt. And if they choose USAID as a partner, We, in theory, have few strings attached, and we really want to get, we're in the business of trying to make sure that these countries are developing themselves to eventually become, equal to the United States. So this is one way in which global security issues have infiltrated international development in a kind of interesting, non-traditional way, giving this choice to the host country of, well, are you going to go ahead with this authoritarian power, or are you going to try to serve your own people, and really listen to what they want and make sure that the programs are responsive to their needs, and instead of trying to serve China's interests. And you see this play out across the developing world. Right now, if you go to, most African countries, Ethiopia, Zambia, you're seeing this kind of interplay of what is this host government going to choose? Are they going to choose China, or are they going to choose the United States? So it's an interesting space that's developing. But more traditionally, how USAID supports and works on global security issues is primarily in, for example, in Afghanistan, where I served from 2018 to 2019, trying to support civil society in Afghanistan to hold their government accountable in holding legitimate elections. So we will support civil society organizations who really are, pushing their host government to abide by the rule of law and hold legitimate elections. So NGOs have really gained a prominent role at helping to diffuse, mitigate, and prevent conflicts. And they also strengthen, USAID helps to strengthen their influence and recognition by building strategic partnerships with these local organizations and NGOs, and also building their capacity. So another example I wanted to talk about was in Lebanon, where I'm serving now. The US foreign policy objectives in Lebanon are really to make sure that Hezbollah does not, take over the majority rule in Lebanon. And so we're really going to, what we do is we don't, USA doesn't directly try to counter Hezbollah. What we do is we will support economic stability and reforms to fight corruption and also improve public service delivery, specifically in neighborhoods and areas that have a Hezbollah presence. So they'll see that, the United States is supporting these local communities and promoting inclusive economic growth that help really ensure that, these extremist ideologies don't find a safe harbor in Lebanon. So, for example, we have a couple of programs right now that are kind of interesting that really, really go to this point. So one is called the Community Support Program. And what we do is our contractor and USAID meet with local communities and municipalities to find out what are the types of small scale infrastructure programs or grants that they need within their community that they're not receiving, for example, from the government of Lebanon, which right now there's not an active government in place, there's a caretaker. So our programs are really trying to, on the one hand, provide assistance through public services that are not otherwise being delivered by the government of Lebanon. And so what we do is we meet with them and we find out, okay, for example, after the Beirut port blast, we met and said, we're going to do large-scale rubble cleanup. We're going to do reconstruction and infrastructure so that, we are rebuilding people's businesses to try to help promote, the economy recovering. So it's really international development in that way is contributing, indirectly to global security and making sure that Lebanon continues on a democratic path. The last one I really wanted to talk about was the health sector, which is not something that you maybe necessarily think of as particularly relevant to global security, but it is, and it's becoming even more so. So The United States, we've invested, USAID specifically has invested $1.1 billion since 2009 in programs internationally to ensure that there are necessary systems in place to prevent, detect, and respond to epidemic-prone emerging disease threats. So for example, unfortunately, this program did lapse for about a year, and it has been kind of neglected as other priorities, shoot up. So it's really kind of a juggling act to try to keep track of, well, what program should we make sure goes forward first, and given the challenges. And so these epidemic-prone infectious diseases are really threatening, as we've seen, national boundaries, and they can spread really quickly, right? So USAID actually, in September of this year, just started a $100 million project to this project is called Strategies to Prevent Spillover. So stop spillover. It's a 5-year program, and it's run by Tufts University, and it's basically going to be a consortium of wildlife and human disease experts that will study and address threats posed by emerging diseases, specifically zoonotic diseases, so those that jump from animals to humans. And so you have to think, well, why is the United States, why do we contribute 0.1% of our federal budget every year to international development programs through USAID? And really, it's not purely altruistic. Although we do care about, spreading democratic values, it really is to harness international development and exercise the soft power to pursue policy objectives. So whether it's to prevent attacks in the US, to strengthen partner country capacity so that they can eventually become a future trade partner, or to prevent an epidemic, there's really several key reasons why the US strategically is using international development to maintain its position in the global security spectrum. So yeah, I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to kind of get over a few key examples for you.
No, that's wonderful. And those are fantastic examples. Specifically, I was really interested in the health component, selfishly, as a global health minor.
Okay.
And the zoonotic diseases sparked my ear because I just read something recently that 75% of diseases that have been discovered in the last, I think it said 30 some odd years, have been zoonotic diseases.
Yeah, it's a huge area that's really, right. It's changing our lives.
Yeah, obviously. It's a critical security threat.
It is. It really has become one. And we saw that, when I was serving in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, we saw that with Ebola. There was a huge response, actually, while I was there to try to contain it, because the original, time it came around and it stemmed from Liberia, it got into the United States. So we learned, okay, we need to quickly try to build up the capacity in the DRC to make sure that they can handle this program, this epidemic internally, so it doesn't spread. And they did it. It's come back in phases, but they've done a good job of, the local government has done a good job of really making sure that they're trying to beef up their protection and prevention, but they also have an active conflict in the East. So we had a big problem with trying to get health workers in there to train local staff because they were being attacked. So it's very complex, and that Eastern conflict has stemmed from the original Rwandan genocide. So it's a very complex area where you see this intersection of health, epidemics, conflict, and really, it can destabilize a country very, very quickly. So that's why, USAID has a whole portfolio of programs we implement to try to, boost each one of the sectors to make sure that they have a strong front against all of these really difficult challenges. So.
Awesome. I guess one quick follow-up. considering that the DRC and Lebanon and the United States all have incredibly different capacities for dealing with international development challenges, and considering that they all are addressing very distinct issues within their own nations, what is the most important and consistently addressed issue within global security?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say prior to 2019, which it's changed, um, it was really about strengthening host country governments. That has become a large issue as we've seen democratic backsliding. So we're trying to, in every country we operate, we work with the State Department. And we also, if the US military is present, we work with them very closely to try to make sure we are building the capacity of not only the actors in government, because they may change, but the systems themselves. So we are also working very closely in all of those countries and, in many developing countries with election system, elections monitoring, ensuring fair elections. That is a huge key component of US foreign assistance strategy. I also think, depending on where you are, it could be to deter a war or security competitions. And also just, I think we're really seeing a huge increase of competition over resources. There is a resource scarcity, whether it is energy, agriculture, water. It is really something that has become much more intense over, I think, the past 5-10 years, that we're really seeing. And alongside conflicts related to resource scarcity and instability stemming from that, we're seeing human rights violations. So there's really making sure that we are putting in place protection measures, and the host government is doing as well, in areas that have particular vulnerability to, for example, climate change. So there will be then displaced people, displaced persons, and fighting over access to land. So the other thing, which I know Middlebury, I really love this about the college, is the environmental perspective. So there is going to be, in the next decade now,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow, exactly, preserving clean environment. Access to water, clean water, is a huge issue in Lebanon. So those types of resource conflicts are stemming up more and more. And really, what we're seeing now since 2019 is I think we're going to see destabilizing even further from COVID-19. Although it is, we're getting into the vaccine rollout. We're seeing it in Lebanon right now, where the population can't get access to basic goods like bread, because import-export market has been, interrupted basically from COVID-19 lockdowns, from hyperinflation, caused from economic instability because people have lost their jobs because of the, the pandemic. So we're seeing this more massive inequality. We're seeing massive fiscal deficits, especially in Lebanon, and really these existential threats to the entire sectors of the economy. So I would say, what are the major issues that we are focusing on across the board in international development related to global security? It really is now economic development, access to resources, environment, climate is going to be a big thing, especially under the new administration. And those are key sectors that really, if you have an expertise in that, it will be invaluable as we're starting to kind of ramp up some of those sectors.
Thank you for those insights, Amy.
Sure.
Could you describe a bit more your path from campus to career? So you majored in international studies with a focus in political science and Italian. And what career were you hoping to pursue after graduation?
Yeah, so I studied abroad twice at Middlebury. I was a Feb. Go Febs.
Go Fabs!
Go Febs. Oh, were you a Feb too?
I'm not a Feb, but I love Febs. I'm an honorary Feb.
Okay, nice. Welcome to the club. So my first semester, I studied abroad in Scotland. And then after studying Italian, I studied abroad my junior year in Florence in Italy. So after studying abroad and having a focus, my major international studies, I really wanted to continue that and pursue that. And so I wanted to work internationally. But on the other hand, I also had a focus in political science. And so I interned over a summer actually with a Middlebury College alum who had a law firm in Boston. And so from working there, I found out that I loved, the law and the legal sector. So I really wanted to combine my two interests. Right after college, I moved to Washington, D.C., the heart of politics, and I went to work for a huge law firm, one of the top 10 international law firms. And I decided, this isn't really for me. I don't like the law firm, which is fine. You figure these things out.
Right.
I didn't sort of the law firm I guess, culture. And so from there, I also, but I still loved the law. I knew I loved the law. So I decided to still go to law school. But at the same time, I wanted to do, something international. So I did a dual degree program, which a lot of law schools have. So I did it at American. You can get your JD, and then at the same time, at the School of International Service, you do a 2-year master's program. So while I was in law school, I then worked for the UN at their international criminal tribunals, which is really trying the accused genociders I worked the one in Rwanda and then also the former Yugoslavia. And I decided actually after working there that although fascinating, international criminal law was not for me. So you'll see a pattern here. And I think
trial and error.
Exactly. You go, you say, oh, kind of like that, but I don't like that. Yeah, let's see. And you find out more opportunities as you get further along your career. So I didn't like it because the courts are a little bit set up to be, if you're accused, you're automatically going to be found guilty. There's not a lot of, it's not as transparent or, in a lot of courts actually right now, like in the United States, we feel that way as well. There's kind of this system of justice that's not real true justice. It's more, you're indicted and it's really hard for you to be found not guilty. And it was really set up to be very anti-defense and very pro-prosecution, which I didn't really feel like was a fair. If you're going to be doling out justice, it should be, a really robust system that allows both sides, prosecution and defense, to present their best side, their best arguments. And it was really not. It was more just prosecution. So that was my point of view. Anyway, so after that is when I then started working in DC, because I was like, okay, I want to go back to doing some legal work. And so that's when I worked in the DC court systems. And then after that, I got the opportunity at USAID, and I said, this is perfect. This is like a combination of both my, legal studies, because I'm dealing a lot with contracts and federal procurement and transactions, and then my master's international development, and also my major at Middlebury in, international studies, and having now being very related to global security. So it takes a while to get to sort of like the career, I think, or the position, at least it did for me, that I really found that I loved. But I enjoyed every single step along the way. It just takes some re-examining of, is this really what I want to be doing? Am I the happiest I could be in my career? Do I have the opportunities that I'm looking for? And then, if not, I'm all about shifting and finding along the way. So yeah, that's where I am now.
Awesome. Great. Just being cognizant of time, it would be lovely if we could chat some tips for Middlebury students. So my question for you is, what would be some key positions for Middlebury students to consider pursuing? What are some skills being sought after? And how can students make themselves appealing for points of entry?
Yeah, absolutely. So languages is obviously huge in this sector. Whenever I tell anybody, they ask me where I went to college and I say Middlebury College, they say, oh, it's the language school. People known around the world for languages. And it's true. I know Italian better than, French or Romanian, which I'm now studying, just because Middlebury has such a good program. So as many languages or, as advanced you can get in a language would be key. I would also say there's a big drive now for quantitative skills. So like GIS, statistics, monitoring and evaluation. So if you think about taking some sort of courses in that, you'll at least have the experience to be able to, rely on that in the future, because there's a gap really actually in the market for, particularly for people in monitoring and evaluation or GIS. So having that kind of hard skills, the hard, mathematical quantitative methods, I think is also something really key. I would also say you now have access to top academics in their field. And so build the relationships with those professors. And, you may want to propose with one of them, like, hey, can we like do some research or write a paper? Not that you guys have a lot of free time, but I mean like over the summer or as you have downtime, maybe during J term, and try to propose something, for credit, because you're also going to need a writing sample most likely in the jobs you're applying for. So having that like strong academic paper with one of these professors that you form a close relationship with, I think would be hugely important. And then lastly, what I do as I'm looking through and trying to figure out like, what kind of career do I want? What do I want to do? I start, listening in on just webinars, hearing, different people's perspectives, different events, just like go out and listen to a bunch of stuff and then look those people up. You can see their resume and look on, LinkedIn and kind of reverse engineer so that you can see, oh, okay, this is where they started and this is how they got to where they are. And I do that, and it's really helpful to figure out like, oh, I didn't even know about that opportunity. So.
Amy, thank you once again for your engagement. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure. It's so wonderful to speak with you, Sophie. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any further questions, anyone, or want additional advice. I had a lot of people help me, and so I'm paying it forward. Please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah,
This concludes this episode within the series Exploring Careers in Global Security. Thank you so much for watching. And before you go, I would just like to encourage you to check out the rest of the Global Security series for career perspectives and advice from a number of professionals in a broad variety of organizations. I also encourage you to check out other MIDDVantage career series like Innovation, International Development, Capitol Hill, and Public Health, all of which can be accessed through the Events and Program tab on the CCI website. Thank you again for watching.